I'd like to offer a suggestion. And that is, I do not think that unhappy people are very tough people. And I think that's the bottom line. Unhappy people, and I'm talking about people who are absolutely defined by their unhappiness. I'm not talking about moments of unhappiness and misery. I'm not talking about misery that comes from a catastrophic life event. I'm talking about people who are perpetually unhappy. In fact, they completely lack the ability to be. And I think it's because, well, it could be for a lot of reasons. But I think a lot of it comes down to they're just not tough. And so I want to define what I'm talking about. I want to qualify what I'm saying, because I think it's, there could be a pretty broad definition of what tough is. I don't mean physically tough. I mean mentally tough. And I'm talking about being able to weather life in general. There's a word that I really like a lot. I never hear anybody say it, but I've seen it written in literature on a few occasions, not very often. But when I came across it, it was so anomalous to me that I had to look it up, and it really gave me a lot to think about. And the word is inure, or you could say inure. And it means to accustom to hardship, difficulty, or pain. To toughen or harden or habituate. You see, life is hard, and I'd like to say that to be able to get through life, you have to be tough. But it's not the truth. No, you don't have to be, because a lot of people don't. And they do make it through life. Well, I mean, we all die, but some people go all the way to their finish line completely miserable. And they might have momentary happiness. Like, it's all going to come down to the mood. And we all know how moods are. They come and go quickly. Very, very quickly. And the people that are unhappy have a massive, grossly imbalanced scale of happiness to misery. I mean, the misery far outweighs any kind of joy that they have or that could be expressed. And I think the bottom line is that they cannot adapt to changes in life. They cannot adapt to things that are unpleasant. They cannot adapt to unexpected circumstances. They can't become accustomed to hardship. Not everyone's going to be walking easy street. Not everyone's promised that. Despite what you might hear by motivational speakers, or what you read in books, or what you see on TV, God doesn't have the same plan for everybody. He allows people to go through life sometimes through very rough patches, very long rough patches, and sometimes it may seem to never end. But I would challenge you to look at people who are in much worse circumstances than you are. There have been people who could be joyful behind bars. Or there are people who are living in such destitute situations that, and they seem to be happier than people who have plenty. A discovery was made years and years ago that that people who didn't believe in God and couldn't be happy were people who had abundance. It tends to be people who live in nations like ours that are wealthy, that have abundance. And the reason they have a problem, the reason that these particular people have a problem with a belief in God or with happiness in general in life is because they look at other people. They look at people who are worse off than we are. And they say, how could a God do that? And studies have found out that the people that they're talking about are actually quite happy. And they don't have a problem believing in a God. And this video is not about believing in God. Don't mistake that. But, given the example that I've given you, it has something to do with it in this context. But there are people who cannot. You just have to understand that why I said that. The reason why I said that is because hardship does happen to people. Some people live seems like a pretty easy life, right? And we look at them and go, why can't I live like that? Why can't I insulate myself? I've never been rich. And I've been around, I've lived in neighborhoods where I've had bad neighbors, squatters around me. There have been people, drug users, drug dealers. You've had people who beat their spouses, and people come crying to your door at night to get away from them. People playing loud music, just rude, disrespectful people that cannot be dealt with. And you feel like in those situations, I just can't be happy. I cannot deal with this and be happy. I guess I'll just be miserable until I can get out of this. And you look at people who have more than you, and you're jealous because they seem to be able to put a wall around them and their property, or they can geographically locate themselves somewhere where they don't have to live with that. But see, here's the problem. And I've discovered this by having friends who are better off than me. And I've discovered this by doing my job, because in my job I work out in the field. I go to so many different places. I work in the utility industry, so I end up in all sorts of nice neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. And I have found out that even in those really posh, exquisite neighborhoods, they have the same problem. So what I would suggest is that you can improve your living situation. You can improve your finances. You might even be able to improve your spouse, either by people willing themselves to change or by getting a divorce and ending up with somebody else. You could even improve that. You could improve the kind of vehicle you have, so it's easier to get to work. You don't have to worry about breaking down. But mark my word, there's always something that's going to challenge your joy and challenge your happiness. Now, joy and happiness are two different things. So that's for an entirely different video. That's for something else entirely different. But for the sake of this video, I'm speaking about them in such a similar way that it's not worth it to pull them apart and make a difference. But there are things that are going to challenge your joy and your happiness. And you're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to succumb to this and give up the hope of joy or happiness and just accept misery? I would say that you are never going to get away from those challenges. You're never going to get away from hardship or difficulty or pain. It's always going to be there. You're going to have hills and valleys. Sometimes you'll be at the top of the mountain, sometimes you'll be at the bottom. And I don't care where you are, who you are, how much money you make, who you're with, it doesn't really matter. But you can be happy. And it takes toughness. It takes toughness to be happy. You see, there are some things that we should not become tough to. There are some things that we should not become inured to. A child should never be inured to domestic violence. Nobody should. Nobody should become inured to toxic relationships. Nobody should become inured to a great number of things that you really have within your power to change. Things that violate the laws of man and nature. See, you can do something about some of those things, but there are things in life that you can't do anything about. You might be able to change things within your own sphere, things that are in your orbit, things that are within your family, things that are within you and in your life. But you may not be able to change things out there. And it's going to take, if you want to be happy, you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to toughen up. You're going to have to accept pain. Now, on a different scale, it's kind of like this. You know, we lived in Minnesota. Our family, when I was growing up, we lived in Minnesota for a couple years. And Minnesota is extremely cold. I mean, right now, it's below zero up there. And so we had moved there from Indiana. In Indiana, it gets cold too. It gets really, really cold. Not like it does in Minnesota. And the people up there, even though they would be really cold, they seemed much more accustomed to it than we were. And it's because it took time. It takes time for your blood to thicken. It takes time for your body to adjust. And within a couple of years, you're taking your jacket off at 35 degrees. Because you're starting to think, wow, it's nice. It's nice to feel it warming up. Because you become accustomed to it. When you're working out, when you first start doing it, you haven't done it in a while, your body hurts and you're in pain. But that's because you're not accustomed to it. And that's when you want to quit. But you have to keep on going. You have to expose your body to that kind of pain long enough for it to go away. And then you can become happy and satisfied and content in it. And that's how everything in life works. That's how everything works. So it comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to discipline. You have to discipline yourself. You have to make up your mind that you're going to find a way to accustom yourself to hardship and pain. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at what it will do for you. You can actually become happy. You can actually find joy and meaning and purpose behind it all. So it takes discipline. It takes a disciplined mind to say that I'm not going to live unhappy and unmiserable anymore. I'm going to find a way to be happy. It takes exposure. It takes discipline and it takes exposure. You cannot accustom yourself to something by hiding from it. You cannot become inured to pain and difficulty by running away from it. You can't do it. You have to be willing to expose yourself to it. You have to be willing to put yourself on the line and say, I'll take the hard knocks. When guys go into the cage in MMA and they're going for the belt, they know they're going to get hit. They know they're going to get punched in the face. They know they're going to get hurt. They might get a broken nose. But they find purpose and meaning. And it doesn't matter how hurt they are at the end. It doesn't matter how bloody and how bruised they are. They're happy. Because they know, even if they lost, they know that they had the guts to go in there and stick with it. And they're doing what most people are unwilling to do. Most people are unwilling to go in there and risk it and take pain to find purpose and joy and happiness. But that's why it's so fulfilling for them. And that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to be willing to take the hard knocks. You're going to have to be willing to get bruised and hurt and exposed. You're just going to have to. If you're going to be happy in this world, you're going to have to be willing to take it. And so here's what I would say. There's a threefold way of dealing with these things. Because not everything you should get used to. The things that you should not get used to, the things that you should not become hardened to, are the things I've already mentioned. You know, you don't want to become hard to the point that you don't feel for anybody or anything. That's not what becoming inured is really about. In the way that I'm talking about it. It could be. You could use it in that context. I'm sure people have become inured to their families, to love, to any kind of happiness that life naturally presents itself, but you don't have to. And I'm saying that you need to become inured to the things that you can't change that are robbing you of your joy. And what you have to do, I've written down 3 things that I really believe help. And they don't all apply all at the same time necessarily. But number 1, I've already talked about some. You have to expose yourself. Be willing to expose yourself to hardship. And you're not, like I said, you're not going to run, you can't run away from it and experience the joy in life that's there waiting for you on the other side. You'll never have a shot at the belt. You'll never have a shot at the medal or the trophy. You know, this is a race that you're running. You do realize that, right? Life is a race that you're running. And if it's too uncomfortable for you and there's too much pain and you step off because you go, well, you know, it's just not for me, I'm never going to do it. You're never going to be happy. You'll never have the satisfaction of knowing you ran that race. And so you're not going to, there's no guaranteed outcome, but there is a satisfaction of knowing that you've got grit. The second thing that you could do to overcome the hardship is educate yourself on the things that bother you the most. And sometimes the things that make us unhappy are not even the big things. They're the little things. Sometimes for me, just for me, one of the things that has the potential to make me miserable is living next to people who are rude and disrespectful, and they have no respect for your property or your privacy, and they play and blast your music so loud. Or they just do a whole number of things. That has potential to make me miserable. But what you can do about the things, and there's other little things that could bother you. I mean, you have them. Everybody has them. And the thing that I just mentioned, that doesn't bother some people. Not at all. But you have something else. And what you could do is educate yourself on the things that bother you. Maybe there are particular kinds of people. Educate yourself. Educate yourself as much as you can about people and things, and just expose not only yourself physically and in a sensory kind of way to things, but expose and educate your mind so that you know what else is out there. And when you find out that other people in life have gone through what you've gone through and they've learned how to be happy and joyous, you're going to realize that you can do it too. And that if you get to the finish line in life someday, that is, we're talking about life as a race, and we're talking about the finish line being death. If you get to the end someday and you're still miserable and nothing's ever changed for you, you need to know that that's your fault. And so you need to educate yourself, but you also need to learn to find the benefits and advantages to adversity, to hardship, to pain, because there is advantages to it. You just need to find it. There have been people who have been in prison camps, in destitution and poverty, and they still found happiness and joy. They found purpose. But that's why. That's why they found joy and happiness. They found purpose in their pain. They found purpose in their hardship. You need to become inured. You need to become tough. Because that's the only way that you're going to make it through life happy. Oh, you'll make it through life if you don't. But it won't be a life worth living. Let that challenge you today. Let that be food for thought. I hope it's helped. And if you think that this could be of some encouragement to somebody else, I would suggest and encourage you to share it with somebody. All right. Thank you.